Good morning, and thank you all for joining us. We are just going to let the room fill up as folks come in. We'll start in just a few moments. Good morning, everyone. We're just waiting for folks to come in. We'll start in just a few minutes. Welcome. Good morning, everyone. We'll start in just a couple minutes. The room is still filling up. Good morning, everyone. On behalf of Education Trust New York and the Raising New York Coalition, I'd like to thank you all for joining us today. We are so excited to actually share a preview of our latest poll of parents of young children in New York. I am Dr. Dia Bryant, and I serve as the Executive Director at EdTrust-New York. Our organization helps to lead and coordinate the Raising New York Coalition. It is a statewide group of early childhood, business, and health organizations dedicated to improving equitable outcomes for children in the first 3 years of their life, their families, and the professionals who care for them. The Raising New York Coalition's focus is on creating a comprehensive prenatal to school entry system that is committed to equity, quality-driven, appropriately funded, well-coordinated, cross-sector, and that fully embraces the racial, cultural, linguistic, and geographic diversity of our beautiful state's infants and toddlers and their families. You can see more about Raising New York on this slide. Over the past 3 years, Raising New York has regularly surveyed parents across the state to help ensure that our work is informed by the people who are using the services and those who know infants, toddlers, and systems and support them best. Access to high-quality childcare is crucial to getting more New Yorkers back to work as we continue our economic recovery amid the ongoing pandemic and persistent inflation. Yet, our latest poll found that across racial groups, parents of young children encountered challenges accessing childcare. What's more, parents' experiences with the childcare system vary widely across racial lines, with Black families more likely to say they needed care on evenings and weekends, and nearly 3/4 of Black families reporting that they have to travel more than 10 minutes to reach their current childcare program. Across all racial groups, parents said that issues with childcare have affected their ability to attend work, school, or other important commitments. And 2 in 5 families from low-income households indicated that their child does not attend a childcare program because they actually can't afford it. Today's poll results underscore the urgent need for New York to invest in a high-quality, universal childcare system that will serve all families equitably. It also shows that there is broad support among New York parents for the investments at the state level to ensure that all children have access to a high-quality childcare program, including minimizing the cost to parents and ensuring that our early educators earn a family-sustaining wage. As leaders across New York continue to develop policies for this year's legislative session, it is crucial that officials listen to the voices, concerns, and needs of those most proximate to the problems, the parents of young children. And we must act swiftly to support policies that will improve the lives of children and families across our state. So before we dive in, a few logistical notes. We'll have time for some questions and answers about the poll results. And if you have a question, you just use the QA function at the bottom of your screen. Our team will monitor the questions that are submitted, and the panelists will answer them during the QA time. Also, please feel free to use the chat function to introduce yourselves and to share whatever resonates. We'll be releasing the information that we share today publicly tomorrow. But first, before we jump into the results of the poll, I am incredibly humbled and excited to actually have a parent with us today to share some of her experiences from the childcare system. Manzi Miyako is a parent who lives in Queens, New York, and has faced and overcome a number of challenges accessing childcare for her children. Thank you so much for being here, Manzi. I know what a challenge it is to do mornings with family. So I know your time is valuable, and so I appreciate you being here. To start, can you share, of course, can you share a little bit about yourself and your family with us?
Okay, so the short end of it is I am a single mom of 3. I work and I go to school currently, right? After my long, never-ending seems journey with childcare. So here I am today to try to make a difference for somebody else.
Awesome. And your story will definitely inspire us all to keep fighting and to elevate the voices of parents with similar experiences. I know that trying to work and go to school and raise little kids is hard. I know that firsthand. I've done it several times. What has happened? Tell us a little bit about your experience.
So the childcare for me, it's because we were like in shelters, so we moved around a lot. So it's either we're at a place where the system wouldn't provide us with childcare because I wasn't working, which in itself just sounds crazy, or there were no daycares in the area where we are that even accepted the vouchers that the city provided or even had any space.
Wow, that's challenging. And I understand, like, you were in Jamaica, Queens, trying to figure out how to sort of transport the kids from one place to another. How did you manage that?
So I was staying in Astoria. The daycare was in Jamaica,
Oh, wow.
and they, first of all, he was like, the trip was too far just for 3 children. If I could find other people, then he might consider. So I'm like, hey, maybe, I'll pay you gas or something like that. But at the time, the gas, everything was going up, and the price that he gave me for the gas, I'm like, listen, well, I guess we're staying home, So yeah, that was the other thing. Um, I really wanted them because in the area that we were, the daycares, they were not used to, they're not accepting the vouchers, or they didn't have the capacity for 3 children. So I would have to have one over here, one over there, one over there. And life is crazy enough as it is.
Wow. So did you have to like pivot or like stop working, change jobs? What did you do? Like, how did you solve?
There was really no solve because at the end of the day, my kids are what it is. It was difficult in the time where, because I couldn't work, because I had my kids. So, but at the end of the day, I had to do what I had to do. It's not like I could leave them on the side of the street and go to work,
Yeah.
So that just kind of went out the window. It was hope, and then there wasn't any. And it's So
So
we
how did you end up covering the costs? Like, so tell me about like how you ended up figuring it out and working it all out.
so you know, all things work for the good of those who believe, because unfortunately, um, something led me to get to acquire a voucher from ACS actually.
Wow.
So that is how I've been able to get the kids into school. Literally a month ago. Okay, September 1st.
Wow.
My daughter was a year, maybe 2 years, going on 2 years when I started this journey. She's about to be 4 next week. So yeah.
And tell me, what are you studying?
So I'm currently a liberal arts major, but I initially went in for nursing, but because of this whole shebangaling, because that's what I could is for lack of a better word, because I don't think there's a word for it. I kind of lacked a little bit, so I fell off. But I want to be a nurse, so I'm going to finish out the semester as a liberal arts major and then pursue nursing after.
And you feel like your care now that you have is pretty stable. You must feel free, like a little more free to not have to worry about it.
It's still because like like when you have to like get out of the habit, because I've kind of been at home with these kids, or even though they get on my nerves, so it's still kind of like you have to get back in the swing of working. You got to get back in the swing of going to school, working, and going home to take care of these kids. So it's like I just kind of want to stay home and sleep right now. Like my body is so tired, like my body just wants rest, but I have to get up and I have to keep going. I can't just, now that this freedom, as you so call it, it's not freedom because now I got to work.
But do you feel like you have a rhythm now? Do you feel like you have like a rhythm or a system, or like how are you feeling about the current care?
So I feel great about like where they are. They all actually like going there, besides the fact that my kids are like super duper attached at the hip, for lack
Mm.
of a better word, because we've kind of been this one big noise making family for 3 years. So it's like now the transition for them, like the first couple of days, they were excited. Yay, school. Now it's like, can I get my leg back? I love you and all, go to school. But
So like now that you've navigated these challenges, how like what kind of advice would you offer to a mom, a family, a parent, a caregiver that sort of is in the same situation that you were in?
it's kind of hard to say I would give advice to a parent, because dealing with children and work gives you a sense of purpose. Like outside of taking care of your kids, it gives you a sense of purpose, and that sense of purpose getting taken away, I can't really advise anybody how to deal with that. The only thing that I can do is advocate for the money for them to get care. Like people in situations like me in shelters, they don't have access. Some of them don't have family members, they don't have aunts, they don't have uncles, they don't have anybody to leave their children with. So it's not so much what I can tell them, because I cannot tell, not everybody is going to deal with the situation like I deal with it. But I could just stand as a voice in between them and the place that they need to be in order to become or be in the mind space or the physical freedom, mental freedom space that I am right now. That makes sense.
It makes complete sense. Um, Thank you for sharing your story. There are so many women who, I mean, myself included, are challenged by childcare. And
Yeah.
um, in some ways, we sort of become superheroes and jump through all the hoops and jump over all the obstacles and build something, out of nothing with
Right.
both babies and ourselves. And so I am incredibly inspired by your resilience, by your ability to just not give up, and for pursuing your degree to continue to make the world better. And I can't thank you enough for sharing with us today. And I wish you the very best. And you know how to find us if you need anything.
Thank you guys for having me and for even listening. Okay, I appreciate that.
Of course. Have a good day, Mancy.
You do the same. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Manzi. You know, we as advocates know that Manzi's story is not unique. There are many families that face the challenges of, you know, getting kids out of the house in the morning and getting them somewhere safe so that we can pursue our own passions and, as Manzi said, have a purpose. Very important. What's interesting is that the findings of our poll actually underscore the challenges that Manzi faced, living in a shelter, not having care close by, and needing to find resources to pay for care and to get to care. And so we are excited to now turn it over to Mara Farrell from Global Strategy Group. Global Strategy Group conducted this poll in all of our polls over the last 3 years. Maura will be walking us through some of the key findings from the poll this morning. Maura?
Thanks, Dia, and thank you so much to EdTrust. It's been a pleasure to work on these polls over the last 3 years. And this one is particularly special because it's my first poll briefing as a new mom. So it's really coming full circle. I'm going to talk you through the poll and some of our key findings. I want to be mindful of folks' time, so I'm going to go through these relatively quickly. But if you have questions, please type them in the chat and we'll try to get to them at the end. So what we did was a poll of 456 parents of children under the age of 5 throughout New York State. We conducted it at the end of September, so this is very fresh data. And the poll is representative of parents of children under 5 across the state. 82% of the interviews we collected were conducted via mobile device, and 26% are among parents who have a household income of less than $50,000 per year. I'm going to run through these really quickly so you can see some of the highlights of our findings. Parents' choices of childcare, the mode of childcare that they use, are really driven by feeling like they're able to access a quality option and by the cost of that option. And one thing that really came through in our data is that income is a very, very clear determiner of the type of mode that parents choose. Parents with higher incomes are much more likely to have children in childcare or other paid care. For those who can find childcare programs that are affordable and accessible for them, they tend to be satisfied overall with that option. But most parents, regardless of mode, do experience regular disruptions to their childcare, and that's pretty consistent across the board. The other thing that we found in our data is that parents firmly believe that the state has a responsibility to ensure that all families have access to childcare programs, and they even support raising taxes to fund these efforts. So with that, I'll get into the data. So the first slide I'm showing you really gets at the question of when parents are making this really big decision about what type of childcare they're going to rely on, what are the top factors that influence this decision? So this slide shows you the top 2 that parents selected in blue, and that's the overall data among parents throughout the state. And then we've broken it out on the right-hand side of the slide by income and by race. So the first thing to really think about when you're digesting this data is that cost rises to the top of the importance to people when they're making this decision. 34% of parents say that's in their top 2 most important factors. And for lower income families, it's even more of an important factor as they're making this decision. Quality, both quality of learning program and quality of facility are also incredibly important and really rise to the top for families, particularly Black parents. Hours and flexibility of scheduling are also incredibly important. 25% of parents put this in their top 2, including 31% of Latinx parents. And 31% of parents put location in terms of whether it's an easy commute, how close it is to where families live, in their top 2. And some of these options that didn't quite rise to the top as much, program was recommended by someone I know and trust. 17% of parents put that in their top 2. That's nearly 1 in 5 of parents putting that in their top 2 important factors, and is particularly important for lower income parents to feel like when they're putting their child in a program that someone that they know and trust has vouched for that program. So we know what's driving parents' decisions. Now I want to show you the data in terms of what mode parents chose for childcare. So the one that rises to the top is preschool or pre-kindergarten. 43% of parents of young children say that their child is enrolled in preschool or pre-kindergarten. 35% say they or their spouse stays home to care for their child. That data is extremely interesting if you look at it by race. So low-income parents are 20 points more likely to say that they've decided to stay home to take care of their child. Relying on paid care such as a nanny, babysitter, or acquaintance, 23% choose that option. And that is higher among higher income parents and Latinx parents. 22% say they rely on family-based or center-based childcare. And again, income is a real determiner here, with higher income families more likely to have a child in childcare. For parents whose child does not attend a childcare program, the reasons behind that decision have to do with quality and cost. 31% say they have had trouble finding a quality childcare programs for their child, and 30% say they're unable to afford quality childcare. And if you look at that number among lower income families, that number is 40%. The other thing I wanted to note on the slide before we move on is that 11% of parents who don't have their child enrolled in a childcare program say they're on a waiting list, but they haven't been admitted to childcare. That's more than 1 in 10 parents, which is really a huge number if you think about it. So we know what drives parents' decisions and what mode parents tend to use. How is this working out for them? Overall, 51% of parents say that their child care situation is very workable, which means 49% across the state say their situation is not very workable. And if you look at this slide, though there are a bunch of people, regardless of race, income, or part of the state, who say that their situation is not very workable. This is particularly high among white New Yorkers, and particularly high outside of New York City as well. In terms of finding childcare, there's some really interesting differences by mode and how easy or hard it was for parents to find the option that they chose. So interestingly, if you look at this data, it's actually, parents say that it's harder to find a paid nanny, babysitter, or acquaintance, or someone who can take care of their child without being paid, than it is to find a good preschool program or find a good childcare program to enroll their child in. In terms of how workable those situations are, the situations that are the most unworkable for parents are having a child in preschool and having a friend or family member take care of their child. Those who have their child in a child care program are actually much more likely to say that their situation is workable. And if you look at the data among parents who stayed home to take care of their child, they're also much more likely to say that this situation isn't workable for them, with 54% saying it's not very workable. If parents have children attending childcare, most of them found that option by contacting the program directly at 61%. Among parents who have children in childcare, we asked a series of statements to those parents and asked them whether or not they agreed or disagreed with each one. And if you look at this slide, the overwhelming thing you see is blue, and a lot of blue. So there's a lot of agreement with almost every statement that we tested. Parents feel their child is safe. They feel their program provides hours and location that works for them. They feel like their program is helping their child be on track for kindergarten and that their program is high quality. But there are some really important differences in the intensity of this data. So if you look at the strongly agree numbers on the left-hand side, parents who have their children enrolled in childcare overwhelmingly feel that their child is safe, healthy, and well cared for. But there's a drop off as we go down this slide. Programs could be more flexible. They could be in a more convenient location. They could be doing more to ensure that their child is developmentally on track for kindergarten, and that they have teachers who share their family's cultures. So there are all areas for improvement, although parents with children in childcare tend to be satisfied overall. And the one statement we have on this slide where there wasn't overwhelming agreement is the statement at the very bottom. I don't feel strongly that my child needs to be learning in their childcare program. 41% of parents strongly disagree with this. And this is consistent with other data that we found throughout our work, which is that parents are incredibly focused on their child being prepared for school. It's extremely important to them. Yes, parents overall tend to be satisfied, or parents who have their children in childcare tend to be satisfied, but parents, regardless of childcare mode, still deal with disruptions in their care. So 41% of parents said that in the past 30 days, they've had issues with childcare that affected their ability to attend work, school, or other commitments. 28% say they've had 2 to 5 disruptions in the last month, and 13% have had 5 or more disruptions in the last month. Overall, what's really driving these disruptions are their child being sick or sent home from care. 25% say this has happened to them in the last month. And 20%, 1 in 5, say their child care provider was temporarily unable to care for their child. So I'm going to talk through the data from our survey on parents' priorities for childcare. So this slide talks through some characteristics of high quality childcare programs, and we asked parents to rate how much of a priority each one was for their family. So is it a top priority? Is it a major priority but not the top priority? Is it a minor priority, et cetera? And what really rises to the top is a clean, safe, and welcoming facility. That's consistently a top priority across the demographic groups that we looked at in this survey. But there are a few other things that make it into the top tier where 50% or more parents say that this is a top priority for them. And that's affordability, as you might expect, proximity to where the family lives or works, and that the program has an age-appropriate academic curriculum. Affordability is particularly important for lower income parents. Proximity is particularly important for Black and Latinx parents, as is age-appropriate academic curriculum. 64% of Black parents say this is a top priority for them, as do 54% of Latinx parents. What we've seen in our data is that Black parents are particularly focused on academics, and program quality is particularly important to them. We tested several initiatives, options that policymakers have considered that relate to childcare. All of these test well and are viewed favorably by parents overall. The data on this slide is showing you the percent of parents who say this is extremely important. But what really rises to the top is prioritizing access to high quality childcare in a setting and location that works for their family, and ensuring that children attend childcare in a setting in which their development is prioritized. That's particularly important as well. And some of the other initiatives that we tested, ensuring families don't pay more than 7% of their income. 47% of parents say that that's extremely important. 44% say ensuring that teachers in early education programs earn family sustaining wages. We see slightly better data for that than if we say ensuring caregivers in childcare settings earn family sustaining wages. So that's just a little language finding and a language recommendation there. We tested a few policy options and asked parents whether they support or oppose each one. The data on this slide is the strongly support numbers among parents. And again, consistent with all the data that I've shown you, access rises to the top. There's the strongest support around access to affordable, high quality childcare for all families who want it within the next 5 to 10 years. And then interestingly, I was really encouraged to see that 56% of parents, including 55% of white parents, really want a focus on cultural competence, working to encourage and support early childhood education programs that are aware and respectful of different cultures and include language and customs from many cultures. 61% of Black parents and 58% of Latinx parents strongly support cultural competence initiatives as well. And parents support New York State raising taxes to ensure that most New Yorkers have access to quality, affordable childcare. To see 72% total support among parents, that's a very, very encouraging number. It's particularly high in New York City. I haven't asked this question in a statewide poll in a couple of years, but the last time I asked a similar question to this in a voter poll, we saw majority support as well. So to know that this is something parents really support, and I would predict that if we ask this question of all New Yorkers or of all voters, we would see high support as well. So that's really encouraging. I'm going to talk through a couple more slides quickly before turning it back to Dia. We asked in our survey whether or not parents have used a home visitation program. A third of parents say they have used a program or plan to use a program. And that number is particularly high among Black and Latinx parents in the state. Among parents who have had experience with a home visiting program, 94% of parents say that they found it helpful. So that's a really overwhelming, resounding agreement that these programs are helpful and really providing a service for parents. Over a third of parents have children who have received early intervention or special education services. And that number is slightly higher among parents in New York City and among Latinx parents. Notably, 21% of parents say that they have not received early intervention or special education services, but they believe that their child is eligible to receive them. Among that group of parents, that 21%, 18% say they're waiting for an evaluation to take place. 18% say that they don't think the services would benefit their child, so there's certainly an education component there. 13% want online services but weren't given that option. And then less than 10% of parents are waiting for an available therapist, don't have the support they need in their region, or their service was discontinued. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Dia.
Awesome. Thanks, Mara. Always incredibly illuminating. So we think this information is absolutely critical to inform policies at the state level and even hyper-locally down at the city level in New York City. And we look forward to continuing to center parent voice this legislative season. It is clear that there is some support and will on behalf of many New Yorkers. And I think that the thing we have to think about now is how. I'm going to open up the floor for a few minutes for questions and answers regarding the poll results. And Mara's going to hang out with me to answer some questions. So please go ahead. If you have questions, go ahead and pop them in the Q&A, and we will field those as they come in. I wish there were bubbles like on your phone, so you can see if folks are typing. Oh, but we got one. What, if anything, is most surprising about the findings? Maura, do you want to share first?
Yeah, I think one thing that was surprising is to see that 20% gap in parents choosing to stay home between low-income parents and parents who have an income of $50,000 or more. That's just a huge gap. And if you look at the data, we asked about people who have a family member who is unpaid and takes care of their child. And that number was actually the same. So it was, I think, 22% for higher income parents and 21% for lower income parents. So basically, 1 in 5 parents has someone who can help. And that's kind of regardless of income. Outside of that, people are kind of on their own, and it's a tough situation to navigate, as we saw.
Yeah, that's a great observation. I think for me, just the need, we all understand that cost is a factor. The way it popped up in this poll and was just very strong, and it popped up in a way that was stronger than some of our other work. And the cost of care is actually causing parents to actually rethink their entire lives and renegotiate things that seem standard, like work or school or travel. So to know that this is that type of barrier for families, I think it's something that we really need to focus on solving.
Yeah, that was another interesting thing that came through in the data. When we asked parents how challenging it was to find their program, parents who had their child enrolled in childcare said that it was easy. It's hard to find a family member to take care of your child. It's hard to find a babysitter who you trust and who's reliable. If you can get your child in childcare, that's a really good situation.
Yeah, I would also say the learning data as well. That many families are focused on, like, what is my child going to learn? What does the foundation look like in that infant toddler space? So I thought those stats were incredibly interesting too. There's another question: how were families chosen? Do you want to talk about the methodology a little bit?
Yes, so that's a great question. It's hard to survey parents because they're a smaller sample of the overall population. So what we actually do for pretty much all of our parent polling across the state and across the country is we use an online survey. There's a couple benefits to doing that. It's much easier to target parents because we don't have to call everyone and then talk to someone, find out they don't have a kid who's under 5 and then hang up and then call more people. So we use an online survey. That's really a methodology that has worked really well. And that's how we were able to make sure that the survey was accessible because parents were taking it on their phones. And after doing all of these polls, we have a sense of this is how many Black parents we need to reach. This is how many Latinx parents we need to reach to understand, to make sure that we have a representative sample and that we're talking to the right group of parents. So we use an online survey, and then we modeled what the population would look like and set quotas to make sure that we got everyone who should be in there.
I think we should also name that often we'll use questions that are similar over poll after poll so that we're actually tracking the results of questions over time. And there are a few tracked pieces in this poll that actually give similar results. So resoundingly, we hear that parents want more support and they are interested in state level support for this type of service.
Yep.
Okay, I'll give it 5 seconds if there's another one. Well, I don't see one. And so oh, there's one. How do you account for those without access electronically?
So I don't have a great answer to this question. Really, so many parents have access to a mobile device. Usually it's their cell phone that they tend to take the poll on. So we can't capture everyone. We do take steps to make sure that we're reaching as many people as we can. We always translate our surveys into Spanish so that Spanish-speaking parents are able to take the survey as well. Unfortunately, we can't reach everyone. So there's no real perfect mode to reach people. For example, if we call people's phones, not everyone has a cell phone or landline, but this is the way that we come up with that reach the most parents across a bunch of different circumstances and walks of life.
Awesome. All right, well, thank you all so much for joining. Oh, wait, we got another one. There's a question. Who has the ability to implement the changes we're asking for? And how do we get them? I guess I can take that one. Our policymakers, our advocates throughout the state have lots of information on this issue specifically. And we have some policymakers that have sort of taken the lead on these things. As we follow up with the brief, there is a specific set of recommendations for the state on this. And we encourage you to reach out to us or to any of our partners in the coalition to discuss ways in which you can support advocacy on these issues. Do you see the other question, Maura? There is a large percentage of those who do not know how to access home visiting services. Is there any follow-up available to letting them know how to access the services? Go ahead, Maura.
So we didn't ask a follow-up, partly because we weren't expecting that number to be quite so high. We did name the programs in the survey question. We said Nurse Family Partnership, Healthy Families New York, and Parent Child Plus. So hopefully parents who saw that question and were intrigued and interested by it could look up those programs directly. So that's certainly one way we could do it. Unfortunately, we can't recontact parents because of privacy issues with them disclosing their information from the poll. But certainly it would be something to ask and include in any follow-up research that we conduct.
Awesome. I think we got them all. If you still have questions following today's session, please feel free to reach out to the EdTrust team or check out our website, Raising New York. Our systems for supporting infants and toddlers and their families in New York were in crisis even before the pandemic. And much of the conditions now have been worsened as a result of the pandemic and many of the economic challenges that we have faced over the last 2 or 3 years. Manzi's experience showed us that we're not doing enough to support families with young children in New York. And it's important to know that she's not alone in this challenge, and she has to know that we all are working on her behalf. There are many of us who wake up daily to manage the many obstacles and surprises that having small children and little people in our houses present. And we need to do more to help parents and support the state in doing more to help our caregivers. It's imperative that we continue to listen to parents and families as we work toward policies that will improve the lives of young children and many other families in the state. Thank you again for joining us. Please look out for our poll materials and results that will be released tomorrow morning. It will also include a set of recommendations to state policymakers. And you can always learn more about the Raising New York Coalition and the work of Education Trust at raisingnewyork.org. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day.